Good evening and welcome to the November 11th Administrative and Public Works Committee meeting. We have a quorum. May I have a motion for approval of the October 28th meeting minutes?
Move approval.
May I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The October 28th meeting minutes passes. AMI, what is this? Minutes from, oh, okay. So is that for action? Okay. Minutes from October 28th, 2019 Administrative and Public Works Committee meeting. May I have a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there any discussion? I'm sorry. Any opposed? Motion passes. We have public comment. We will first call up Ms. Doreen Price. So you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I apologize that I ran out of time researching all the things I wanted to research, but I can say that I know enough about the importance of getting the right litigators in our legal department to have some sort of accountability that is built into the system so that we can actually assess as a community what's working and what's not. It's become obvious to me in terms of some personal experiences as well as watching others and actually others telling me of theirs that it's more than ever now important to have agency and to have our rights respected, whether it's a disability or whatever. There's a downstream effect with poor litigation, and you end up having more. So with good litigation and good laws and good ordinances, this is kind of something people can easily see when Mr. Sutton and Betty Esther clearly make an argument for why things need to be done differently and actually true to the values of a community that actually worked really, really well and was very progressive at the time. And their ideas are still progressive, which says a lot about the fact that progressive ideas can endure and they're not just a fleeting fancy. So with that, I'm asking for A11 that there be consideration that be built into the structure of either this ordinance or any future ordinances, or even with regard to the definitions we apply to how we look at our legal department, so that we can grow as a community and not be held behind by things needlessly obstructing that we already know do exist and can be eliminated by just working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. And next and last, we have Mike Basilko.
Thank you. Item A5 and A8 both have to do with purchases for Robert Crown. Both items should not be authorized until citizen requests for information denied over the past year and longer are answered. There are over 25 individual requests known to the city manager and staff that have not been answered, not the least of which is what services were provided by BOA Construction for over $800,000. Item A13, why are we expanding the Divvy Bike program? The citizen survey a year ago had Divvy Bikes as the least important item. Citizen says it was a budget expense that we could live without. Eliminate the Divvy Bike program. Items A15, 16, and 17 all relate to the TIF, the Howard Ridge redevelopment. This subject deserves a separate council meeting to inform all Evanston citizens, and the proposed sale of bonds, any bonds, needs to be a referendum questioned. A21, the sale of marijuana and the locations of sale and the use restrictions deserves much more discussion at council and with citizens. Have a separate meeting on this subject and or pose the issue as a referendum question. Item A25, reject the increase of from $20,000 to $25,000 for the purchase of materials and services without council approval. This is a recipe for squandering funds and for inviting graft. A26, reject the Montessori bond conduit if there is no financial benefit to the city of Evanston. And lastly, I wrote to the council about adding Bennett Johnson to the subset of members who will be interviewing city manager search firms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vasilko. Perfect. A1, approval of City of Evanston payroll and bills. Staff recommends approval of the City of Evanston payroll for the period of October 14, 2019 through October 27, 2019 in the amount of $2,834,639.74. Bills list for November 12, 2019 in the amount of $3,014,798.95, and a credit card activity for the period ending September 26, 2019 in the amount of $175,489.92. It's for action. A3, approval of 2019 through 20 snow towing operation contracts. Staff recommends the City Council authorize the interim city manager to execute contracts for snow towing services in the amount not to exceed $60,000. Funding for snow towing contracts is provided by the Snow and Ice Control General Fund. A list of various towing companies is attached. It's for action. A4, approval of the 2019 holiday parking program. Staff recommends City Council approval of a holiday parking validation program for paid parking sessions on the Park Evanston app beginning November 30th, 2019 through January 4th, 2020. It's for action. A5, sole source purchase of Dell Video Archive Storage Array expansion for the Robert Crown Community Center Library. Staff recommends the City Council authorize the interim city manager to purchase of a compelling SC400 expansion storage chassis as part of the Robert Crown Center Library and Ice Complex project from Dell Computer Corporation in the amount of $39,613. For action. A6, pre-qualification of contractor.
Can you pull that one off, please? I have a question.
Yes, A6. A7, staff recommends that City Council authorize the city manager to execute a sole source contract with Dual Temp Kluger to provide ice refrigeration maintenance services for the Robert Crown Community Center Ice Complex and Library in the amount of $44,223.36. This contract will be for 1 year. Funding for the purchase will be from the Crown Construction Funds. For action. A8, staff recommends the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a sole source contract with Forward Space to provide miscellaneous fixtures and equipment purchase for Robert Crown Community Center, Ice Complex, and Library in the amount of $93,496.22. The current furniture and fixture and equipment budget for this project is $910,000, of which $641,644.48 has been committed for action. A9, staff recommends the City Council authorize the city manager to execute change order number 2 for the 2019 structure lining with Midas Midwest for a 60-day contract extension. There is no change to the contract amount associated with this change order for action. A10, staff recommends the City Council authorize the city manager to execute change order number 2 for the contract for the Fleetwood Jourdain interior renovation in the amount of $13,224. This will increase the current overall contract amount to $651,349 to $664,573. There is no time extension associated with this change order. It's for action. A11, staff recommends the City Council adoption of Resolution 86R19 to approve outside counsel litigation procedures and billing guidelines for action. A12.
Pull that, please.
A12?
Yes, thank you, Alderman.
And can you also pull A13?
Yes. A14, staff recommends City Council adoption of Resolution 123R19, authorizing the city manager to execute a lease agreement with Robin Gable. The lease term for 1 year at a rental rate of $5,335 per year is for action. A15, staff,
Please. And at 16 and 17 too.
okay. A17, staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance 119,
Pull that one, sorry.
Okay.
15, 16, and 17.
okay.
Thank you.
A18, staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance 142-019, amending City Code Section 71217, charges, rates, fees, and penalties, increasing the water meter charges and water rates by 5.4%. This increase has a corresponding decrease to the sewer rate and is cost neutral to Evanston residents. A19, staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance 143-019, amending City Code Section 7133 to reduce the sewer user rate by 4.46% from $3.39 to $3.24 per billing unit. For introduction. A20, the Transportation and Parking Committee and staff recommend City Council adoption of ordinance 145-019, amending various sections of Title 10, Chapter 11, Motor Vehicle and Traffic pertaining to parking on Simpson Streets for introduction. A21, staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance, actually, I'd like to pull this one. A22,
Pull that one, please.
okay. Okay. May I have a motion for approval on consent?
Move approval?
May I have a second? Thank you. The consent passes. We'll go back to,
You have a motion and a second, but you didn't do a vote.
oh, what happened?
You got to do a vote.
Oh, I thought I did a vote.
You need a motion and a second.
Oh, individual vote. Yeah?
Motion a second and they have to do a roll call.
Oh, I didn't say all in favor?
No, you didn't, but yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alderman Fleming thought I did too, so, but either
No,
way,
other thing.
motion passes.
Motion passes.
Perfect. So we're going to move on to the first one that's taken off is A6, Alderman Fleming.
Yeah, A6 is the pre-qualification of contractors for cured-in-place rehabilitation of sewer mains. The staff recommends approving the following contractors as listed in the packet. When these contracts are awarded, they will be funded from the sewer fund. So my question, oh, actually, was this move approval? Do I have to say that, Kimberly? For introduction? Before I start my discussion? Do I? Yes, move it for approval.
Second.
Okay, so I pulled this off because as I was looking at these contractors, and I realized we're not giving them any business at this time, there was no documentation as we usually have about the MWEBE. So it just lists these contractors as, you know, that they were responsive and that they qualify for this work, but it doesn't have anything in here regarding their MWEBE status. So I asked the city manager if she'd have staff here to address that.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Dave Stoneback, Public Works Agency Director. This is just to pre-qualify the contractor, so there is no actual work being awarded at this time. So as we bid projects in 2020, then we'll bring them back to City Council for an actual award, and at that time, they'll have to state their MWEB utilization.
So I understand that, but even at this time, is it feasible for us to try to see if there are any contractors who qualify? I mean, so if we pick one of these people for a job in 2020 and they don't qualify, I understand that there are some things that there's a fee and so on and so forth, but I think it's advantageous maybe of us to try to find someone now who is a minority or women-owned business.
To my knowledge, no minority or women-owned businesses do this specialized type of work.
Okay, and then I cannot remember from the packet, but assuming we've worked with some of these before, is that correct?
Yes, we have worked with most of them before.
Okay, and they all are able to meet our requirements.
They generally ask for a waiver of the MWEBE goal. In the past, some of them have asked to waiver the LEP program, but most of the firms are now submitting to comply with the LEP. There's very little subcontracting opportunities in this type of work. This is lining of small diameter sewer mains ranging in size from 9-inch to 36-inch. They're generally at that job site for one day and then move on to the next job site. So there's no, the only subcontracting opportunities would be sewer cleaning and televising, and most of these companies have their own equipment able to do that, so they don't subcontract that work out.
Okay, well, it would be my hope that we strongly encourage them to meet our LEP requirements.
Yes, we absolutely encourage them to do that.
Strongly.
Strongly
Thank you.
encourage them to do that.
Thank you. So we need, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A6 passes. Next, we have Alderman Sufford and A12.
Sure. Item A12 is Resolution 120R19, referendum for nonpartisan elections. Staff recommends City Council adoption of Resolution 120R19, which will add a referendum question on whether the city should hold partisan or nonpartisan elections to the ballot of the March 17th, 2020 election. This is for action. All right. So this would be codifying past practice, but we haven't really had a discussion about whether this is best practice. So I would say that since we have until the end of December to do this, that we hold this, or if you want to vote on it, I would plan on voting no tonight.
I would be voting with you, so
Okay.
you want to make a motion, or is there any other discussion? Alderman Fleming?
I'm happy to hold it and have a more thorough discussion once we get further past the budget process. I mean, I do want to make sure our elections are done correctly. I haven't really done the research on this, so I'm happy to discuss it more to make sure if we need the question, it's there.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Alderman Rainey, did you have any further discussion? Did you have any discussion for this? No? Okay. Did you want to, so we're going to hold it?
I move that we hold this.
Second.
It's, it will be held. What's wrong?
Are you looking to table it to a date certain or for it to come back next week?
I don't know if next week would be too soon, but we only have until when?
This has to be passed by December 30th, correct?
Yes.
I mean, alternatively, we could get it out of committee and have a discussion at full council. My issue is that while this is definitely establishing what our past practice has been, we haven't had a full discussion about whether or not this is best practice. So in order to facilitate that discussion, whatever you think is the right thing to do, if you want to pass this out to council and have the full discussion,
Today?
well, tonight's agenda looks pretty
Yeah, no,
intense,
so
but
this-
we could do this next week. I mean, if City Manager, you have a better idea of the schedule.
Yeah, based on the schedule, my suggestion would be to table it to a date certain, either November 25th or December 9th.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will go
But I
for
do-
December 9th.
But I do think having a discussion at full council is beneficial. So I'm not sure how if we hold it here, I guess we hold it here and then December
Yeah,
9th
they just
move
go to the
council. Right.
December, yeah. So can we agree to move it to December 9th?
Yeah, we could create space on the agenda December 9th. Is that?
Sure, we'll put it back on APW for December 9th, and then if you move it to the full council that night, there'll be a discussion amongst everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that done now?
I think you need to make a motion to table it
Okay.
but to December 9th.
Yeah, I move that we table this agenda item till December 9th.
Okay. We will hold it until December 9th. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. A13, I have a question. If you could clarify, and I agree with concerns of prioritizing this in our budget for Divvy Bike, but can you give detail on how this is cost neutral to our budget?
Yes, good evening, Chair and committee members. I just would like to acknowledge also, my name is Jessica Heinck. I'm the Transportation Mobility Coordinator. I would like to acknowledge that we have representatives from Lyft here tonight to also answer questions about the proposed contract. Ron Burke and John Stifler, to answer your questions about how this is cost neutral. Lyft is taking on all of the costs of the program. And so our projections for the rest of 2019 show that we will incur a cost. Lyft will be waiving those costs to the city. So there will be no cost to the Divvy program for the city of Evanston in 2019. There will show a revenue and costs as line items, but those numbers will equal each other and cancel out. And then moving forward, as part of the contract, they will continue to incur those costs moving forward as well. And so then there would be no actual line items, however, in the city's budget, because we will not be billed for any future costs, and we will not be receiving any revenue like we are right now, unless we max out at, if we start earning revenue, the program starts earning revenue at $250K a year on user revenue, then we would receive 5% of that revenue.
Thank you, and thank you to Lyft. Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, so I pulled this off just because I was voting no. I'm not anti-bicycle, but I brought this up in parking and transportation, which is I have concerns about adding more bikes to our streets when we have not added more infrastructure for bicycles. So we know we have the Dodge bike lanes, and we have some really nice ones on Church Street. Other than that, the rest of them are not what I would say sufficient for continued addition of bike. Not that I don't want people to bike, but I want them to bike safely. I know we had a discussion not too long about people biking on the sidewalks. We had that discussion in parking and transportation. So anyhow, I'm glad it's cost neutral, but I'll be voting no because I would like us to actually put in some infrastructure for bicycles as well, if we're encouraging more bicycle riding.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Items A15 through A17, Alderman Suffredin.
Sure. I'll just do them all in one thing. Item A15 is ordinance 117-019, approving the First Amendment to Tax Increment Redevelopment Plan and Project for the Howard and Ridge Redevelopment Project Area. Staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance 117-019, approving First Amendment to Tax Increment Redevelopment Plan and Project for the Howard and Ridge Redevelopment Project Area. This is for introduction. Item A16 is ordinance 118-019, designating the First Amended Howard and Ridge Redevelopment Project Area pursuant to the Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act. Staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance 118-019, designating the First Amended Howard and Ridge Redevelopment Project Area pursuant to the Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act. This is for introduction. And item A17 is ordinance 119-019, adopting tax increment allocation financing for the First Amended Howard and Ridge Redevelopment Project Area. Staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance 119-019, adopting tax increment allocation financing for the First Amendment Howard and Ridge Redevelopment Project Area. This is for introduction. Okay.
Good discussion?
I just want to vote no. That's all.
Okay.
I have a question, actually.
Alderman Fleming?
So I would like, if staff can bring this back for a city council, if you can show, and I know Autumn Marini did this at some point, but we have a few different TIFs. If you can show us or show me a document that shows what the TIF fund looks like and then what our bonded balance, is that the correct terminology? I'm not sure, is on the TIF. I know I've had several residents, and I'm not the best necessarily to explain it, but who have emailed about TIFs and asking, we bond against the TIFs, and so is it kind of like a credit card? And so I think if we can provide that documentation, that would be helpful
Thank you.
to bring it to council.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. I'm sorry, did you say something? A21. Staff recommends City Council adoption of ordinance 152-019, amending portions of the city code allowing the enactment of the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act to address possession of recreational marijuana and associated paraphernalia. This is for introduction.
Alderman Russo, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we just clarify, was A 15, 16, and 17 all in one motion, or do we need to do
Yes.
those all? Okay.
Yes.
All right, my apologies.
No problem. I pulled this off because I just want to give all things recreational marijuana very close attention. And if I could just have staff give like a 1 to 2 minute explanation on what this is. Anyone?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of this committee. Erica Storley, Interim City Manager. Michelle Mason-Cup, our Corporation Counsel, drafted this. As I understand it, there's provisions in the city code that allow for citations to be issued if you are in possession of cannabis, and with the new law that's taking effect on January 1, where that is no longer an offense that will be permitted for adults 21 and over, this will codify that. And so starting on January 1, you would no longer be issued a citation for carrying or possessing legal amounts of recreational marijuana.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a quick question.
Alderman Fleming?
Thank you. Sorry to have my light on. So I guess maybe this is also for Chief since he's sitting here. So I know this is a state law we're going to comply with, but how will we explain, maybe we won't have to explain, but how will we work with the community so people understand what the legal amounts are? I mean, it talks about a flower here and all that kind of thing.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll be addressing that through our city mediums, the city department, police department's Facebook and Twitter page. We'll put out the state law with respect to the proper amounts that could be possessed on your person.
Okay. And then I know from, reading some of the police reports, sometimes when you all stop a person for speeding or whatever the offense is, sometimes a search, that might be incorrect, but I think a search can occur if the officer smells marijuana. So not necessarily right now, but maybe Human Services, you can talk to us about how that process will work now that marijuana is legal. I know it's certain dosages, but if the law before was you can search a car or do whatever based on the smell, I'm curious how we're going to address that.
Well, we always pay attention in terms of audit, through the Office of Professional Standards on how a search, which is a Fourth Amendment issue, transpires from a traffic stop. We pay real close attention to that. So now it's gonna more than likely end up in terms of being a DUI if they can prove it. There are several at the International Association of Chiefs of Police. The new testing equipment that will determine your sobriety level with respect to cannabis should be coming out by June of next year.
Okay, great. So at sometime at Human Services, if we can get that on an agenda for you to just have a more thorough conversation about, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
We're just going to add one quick thing, because I've talked to some of you, but not all of you, about we want to do 2 community meetings for the general public to understand what these allowable amounts are. One of them will be geared towards residents who want to know what they can and can't do. So just a very basic overview. We're going to plan to do that in December, but we also want to have a forum for business owners so that they know what they can and can't do in terms of what their employees would be subjected to and for regulations, whether or not they can still have a drug-free workplace, quote unquote, things like that. But to address it, I think Chief was addressing your question, but not completely answering it. It's still illegal under Illinois law on January 1st to consume in a vehicle. So searches will still be conducted based on the smell of cannabis in a vehicle, but we can bring that back to Human Services and address it in December or early next year. So.
Yeah, that would be great. And whatever you're going to discuss at the community meetings, if that can also be shared, obviously with council, but maybe even at Human Services for people who don't go to the community meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have another question. Will it be illegal to smoke in the presence of children? Like, you know, there's a contact high? I mean, I have so many questions about this marijuana. Is that going to
Exactly.
be regulated?
Well, it's still going to be prohibited in a vehicle.
I mean, at home?
At
Just-
home,
yeah.
in a setting where minor children were in the dwelling. I don't know the specifics, so I'll have to get an answer to that one for you and bring it back.
Yeah, please. And then do we currently regulate paraphernalia, where it's retailed, the sale of paraphernalia? Can it be sold freely anywhere now?
I don't know if our city code has provisions on that. That's another thing that we'll bring back for the
There's
library.
zoning laws. I mean, we have someone right now that's applying for the Evanston Plaza, so I think proximity to schools still apply
For paraphernalia?
for paraphernalia.
Could you
Yeah,
detail
we'll
that?
bring that
And-
back.
Yeah, thank you. Alderman Rainey?
This isn't apropos anymore because of the discussion we just had, but one of the things Representative Cassidy said at our meeting was that it's similar to beer. Beer is legal, but you can't drink a beer in your car, and you're not going to be able to smoke a joint in your car because it creates a sense, you know, a different state of awareness. So that, she said that is sort of the.
I'm beyond the car. That part is pretty
No, right,
easy,
but I'm just saying, that was
Yeah.
an interesting thing.
Right.
Yeah,
You
you drink beer
beer.
at home at your kids. And you can have it in your car, but don't smoke
That
it.
part is easy, but the rest of it's not so easy. So,
And also that landlords who say this is a no smoking building,
Mm-hmm.
do not smoke it, but you may consume it. You have consumables.
got it.
Yeah. But anyway, so
Can
the
you-
toolbox is good.
Can you? Never mind. I probably need to have a whole nother
Yeah,
meeting.
this is a
Yeah,
whole-
it's
this is a whole meeting.
yeah, have a list of questions. Yeah, about are edibles coming also?
Yep.
So a lot of questions. So I'll
Let's get started.
got it. Okay.
If you have questions, you can provide us with the list.
Yeah.
We can
Got it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. A22, Alderman Suffredin.
Sure. Item A22 is ordinance 141-019, authorizing the city manager to execute a lease of city-owned real property located at 633 Howard Street with 633 Outpost LLC, doing business as Estacion. The Economic Development Committee recommends adoption of ordinance 141-019, authorizing the city manager to negotiate the lease of city-owned property located at 633 Howard Street. Alderman Rainey requests suspension of the rules for introduction and action at the November 11th, 2019 City Council meeting.
Second.
Any discussion?
Sure.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes. Yes. This is a really important item on the agenda tonight. Everybody has their thing. It's all relative. And I know, Alderman Suffredin, you have an issue with suspending the rules on anything. However, if I could make an argument, and I am really embarrassed that I didn't get to call you today, but let me just say this. The reason I believe this is worth suspending the rules on is because the Economic Development Committee dealt with this and a unanimous vote on September 25th, which is almost, it's at least a month and a half ago. This should have come to the council sometime in October, but it didn't for various reasons. And, that had to do with chalked agendas, the Northwestern issue, public hearings, et cetera. One of the issues was got rejected one time because they didn't have the name of the restaurant in the application. But it's been ready for the agenda. Exactly every single word almost in this packet was the same presentation given to the September 25th Economic Development meeting. Nothing new has happened, other than all the purchases that they've made. One of the items that I think is misleading is that they're getting all the kitchen equipment. Well, all the kitchen equipment Coralie didn't have a real kitchen. They had like a bakery. And the operators of the restaurant, Estacion, had purchased $118,000 worth of kitchen equipment because there's no stove, there's no vent, there's no grill, there's no anything having to do with cooking or frying or grilling. So that's all an expenditure. They really want to open by the 1st of January. The neighbors are supportive of this. Nobody has opposed it as far as I know. Once this goes on the goes back on the tax rolls, I guess it still is. I mean, the former tenant owes $15,000 in taxes. This property has never paid into the real estate tax fund. It never paid the county any taxes. And since 1994, when the TIF was formed, this property has never contributed 1 penny to the increment. This is a business thing, Tom. You are a business guy. Your family owned a restaurant. They know what a 2-week delay in opening a restaurant is going to be. Everybody supports this. The restaurants next door to it support it. The only thing a delay will cause is a delay in negotiating the fine points of the lease. This ordinance is for the staff, the city manager, to negotiate the fine points of this lease. Please, just let it be, the rules be suspended. It's not going to hurt anything. It doesn't mean that tomorrow they're going to start serving food.
Alderman,
Mayor.
I'm sorry, were you done, Alderman Rainey?
More or less.
Alderman Sufferton?
Sure. I appreciate all that. But I think as a practical matter, it would be a 1-week delay, correct? So we could do this on our November 18th agenda if we were to follow our established rules and have this be 2 meetings, correct? Am I wrong that we have a meeting next week on the 18th?
What if we don't? What if we don't have a quorum?
I
Oh, it would have to go to APW.
think that's a risk for every agenda item. The other issue is we were here less than 2 years ago with a solution for this property.
That was my solution, by the way.
I think that it's appropriate to have a public discussion and follow our established rules, without even getting into the merits of the business. But I mean, did we ever realize any money from the previous lease of 633 Howard Street?
You cannot, you might be able to hold our staff responsible for that. I had it explained to me how that happened, but you and I and no member of this council had anything to do with that. However, we cannot hold the owners of Libertad, whose father, by the way, was the founder of Las Palmas and had restaurants for 30 years in the city of Evanston and spent and contributed to our coffers for 30 years, liquor and sales tax, and served the Northwestern community and the city of Evanston and the city of Chicago on Howard Street, as a matter of fact. That was where their first Las Palmas restaurant was open. And they have never let the city of Evanston down. So they're now in Skokie. They got rave reviews from Skokie. They're opening up a taco place in the former Kurt's Cafe. Nobody said anything about that. Are they going to fail there? This is a pretty established, we have vetted their finances. I don't think we vetted the finances of Pascal Bartholomew, but we have vetted these people. We have learned from that mistake.
I'm gonna jump in. If it doesn't come out of APW, our next APW meeting isn't until November
25th.
Correct. We don't have APW until November 25th, but my understanding of what Alderman Sufferton was asking was not to hold it, was to, introduce it tonight and then have it for action next week.
Correct.
So that we wouldn't be suspending the
Yeah,
rules.
I'm just saying, let's follow the rules. And the Kurt's Cafe location was not city-owned
How could we
property,
help?
correct?
No, no, it's not, no.
How could we
The
hold it
owner
though?
is here, the owner is here, if you would like to hear.
I'm not holding, I'm saying, let's not suspend the rules.
But 2
And
weeks,
let's
but a week or 2 weeks is a long time if you want to open on January 1st.
Got it. Alderman Fleming?
So I have a question for staff, because, and I don't hold the last restaurant person, I mean, I don't hold this people responsible for the last people, they're not the same. But I do have a question for staff, which is, one, did the last gentleman yet pay us, or do we have a payment plan? Two, and this is maybe a question you have to address later if you don't know the answer right now, but how have we remedied the situation on our side to make sure that whoever we lease to, we don't find out, a year or 6 months later that they haven't paid us? And then three, another comment, I think, for staff, which is, if Alderman Rainey's timeline about this was passed in October and
September.
or September, is there a way, and I know we have these very long meetings, but is there a way that we can, I guess it's a suggestion, we work with our agendas so that if we know a business is trying to come online or, whatever the case is, we kind of either get them on the schedule in an appropriate amount of time, or we just tell businesses, hey, it takes 4 months or 6 months or whatever to go through our process. So, don't go hog wild at the store thinking you're going to open on a certain date, because as we know, our meetings sometimes aren't as quick and our process isn't as quick as we might hope it is.
Shame on us.
But that's what I'm saying. These are staff questions. So
Could I just say one thing? Instead of focusing on the one failure that we had, we've had people who have double paid their rent. We've had people who are successful, who have Zagat reviews, who were named the 30 of 30 best restaurateurs. We've had a few successes down there. We had one dismal failure.
my question is for staff. So can you answer this, please?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Paul Zalmazak. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the city. I think question number one is
Have we
Mr.
gotten a
Bartholomew
yes.
current? He is still in default. Our legal team is continuing to discuss repayment of both the rent and the loan payments. Okay, so
Okay.
if you look at our weekly city council report, the status of that particular loan indicates that there is potential litigation for that particular issue. So that matter is not closed. I don't know what else to say about that. That was a
fine.
disappointing deal.
That's fine. I'm not here to, he's not on trial. So how are we as a staff, and again, this has nothing to do with the owners of this establishment, what kind of procedures and processes do we now have in place to make sure that we don't get to the end of whatever deal and realize that we have not been paid?
Right. There's nuance to that. We were aware that Mr. Bartholomew was not paying for perhaps 90 days of that default period, and we were in communication with him and encouraging him to pay, and that didn't happen. So that's when we implemented eviction proceedings. However, just to back what Alderman Rainey said, we've done a number of these, maybe a dozen over the last 8 years I've been on staff, and we have not had defaults as a matter of course. I dare say it, but Chicken and Waffles was one of the others, and I think that outcome of that, once that particular property was renovated, and I think Alderman Braithwaite would support, we turned an abandoned auto store, provided the fabric for a new restaurant, and I think Cabo House is doing well. I would argue that the same thing's happening here at 633 Howard, and hopefully we'll get our money back from Pascal. I think question three was more,
It was more of a
suggestion.
more of a statement.
And just to wrap, we only have several leases. It's quite easy to track the leases. They make payments. They don't. We issue default letters.
No, that's fine, but to fairness of the applicant here, if we know he wants to open by a certain date, he's gone through, step 1 or 2 or whatever our steps are, but, just for us to be more mindful either of getting it on the agenda earlier, and I know you're not the agenda master, or giving the business owners an idea of how long it's going to take so that they don't, get one foot out there ready to go, and then we kind of slow them up with our process. Was just my suggestion. It wasn't a question necessarily.
And by the way, the proprietor is in attendance tonight if you had any questions for him.
Paul, can you stay up there? Just a quick question. What's the, and maybe I missed it, I've looked through the agenda, the packet. What is the appraised value of the property right now?
I'm not sure we want to reveal that at this point because we may be in a position where we're negotiating the sale. Yeah, I think we want to, at some point.
So here's the concern of that is
okay.
because, and that's why I'm specifically asking the question, and I want to hear from the owner as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the economic development meeting when we were talking about this, and so I'm looking at the lease agreement. It's almost like you're prepaying down on the loan, in the city of Evanston's taxpayer dollars are financing this proposed mortgage, and you don't know what the value is, which is a concern.
Right. We have had it appraised and we know, but I don't want to reveal that number publicly because we'll be in a position, if the council agrees, to negotiate a sale of the property with a Libertad ownership. So if we reveal that number tonight, then we have no way to negotiate the sale. So what's the question? And maybe there's another way I can answer it without revealing a number.
I think the larger question is, from a business standpoint, and I probably want to hear from the owner, there's an obvious answer of why you would want to purchase versus leasing, but this is a hybrid that you don't really see in the marketplace. And so I'm curious to know, is his intention to, it is to purchase, and why doesn't he do it now, just from the owner's standpoint?
Would we like to invite him up?
Yeah,
Great question.
Yeah.
Mr.
Good evening, my name is Marcos Rivera.
Good evening.
So to your question, why don't I purchase, or why aren't we purchasing the building right now? Honestly, it's because it's a large investment trying to get that, get the restaurant open. So most of the funds are going into all the equipment that needs to be put into there. We do have to tear down some walls and make the space a little bit bigger. So there's quite a bit of investment into the property at this point.
Yeah. It's an interesting arrangement, and if I was purchasing it and if I didn't have this type of financing, I would have to get either additional capital, or I could purchase a mortgage and then hopefully take a line of equity if I knew what the value is worth. So there are just some questions that, looking at the deal and the way it's structured, that I have, but I at least understand your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I get, so ideally, we will, some point along the road, we would like to purchase. I mean, if it makes sense, we want, the first option to be able to purchase the building. But at this point, like I said, we don't have. I mean, taking out another line of credit, or putting us further, and that makes it even that much more difficult. And pushing it, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month down the road is also more straining for a business, and it's just kind of setting us up for failure. I've done this. Libertad's been open for 8 years now. In the restaurant business, especially now, as you've seen, it's kind of getting down to pretty much a science. You just want to make sure that everything is you don't overspend, and you don't put yourself in that hole to begin with, and then trying to dig yourself out is really hard. So I just don't want to overextend myself at this point.
Good.
Alderman, I'm sorry, anything else? Alderman Suffredin?
Sure. That is actually a question for staff.
Yes.
Thank you. Where are we with Smiley Brothers and the recycling center? Have they paid what they owe us to get out of that arrangement?
Okay. Alderman Suffredin, that's that is also a similar scenario as with Mr. Bartholomew. The law department is still in conversations with the Smiley Brother ownership. I've not been party to those conversations, so I don't have all the details, but that is something that the law department continues to negotiate, so to speak. That's not a closed case either.
I guess I was unaware of the gap between economic development and this coming year. So that's like the largest time thief, it sounds like, for this whole process. But since we've had 2 consecutive arrangements that were rent to own that haven't gone in favor of the taxpayers, why would we suspend the rules on this and do another one? I guess I don't understand. I mean, other than the owner's desire to be open January 1st, like, why don't we move forward deliberately, have a full discussion? If this is a good deal for taxpayers, it'll pass next week. I mean, it's a 1-week delay, which I realize on top of the month and change delay is problematic, but we can talk about what were the reasons why that happened, but that wasn't a council decision. I don't know what the emergency nature of suspending the rules is. Is that other than the owner's desire to open January 1st, is suspending the rules the difference between this succeeding and failing? Or can we hold it for a week and follow our procedures when we're entering into a pretty big real estate transaction here?
Okay, let's wait a week. Let's just hold it for a week.
Great. So you make the motion and we can.
Sure.
Is our next meeting budget? Is that what's happening on?
Can we get clarification on
The 18th?
the, we have a budget meeting on the 18th. Yeah.
No, here.
We are planning to have a budget meeting on the 18th, but I don't see a reason at this point in time why we couldn't also include this as part of that agenda.
Okay.
So do we need to motion it, or what are we doing to have this?
I mean, you vote this out? How do you want to do it? My only issue is the suspension of the rules.
Yes,
So,
we'll move it to well.
We're going to move it for
introduce it.
introduction.
No, yeah.
Introduction only.
Right. So someone going to move it for introduction?
So I move this for introduction only, item A22.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Yeah, we'll do all of them.
And lastly, A2, staff recommends approval of, this is items for consideration. Staff recommends approval of the City of Evanston's BMO Harris Amazon credit card activity for the period ending September 26, 2019 in the amount of $4,729.44. It's for action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I abstain.
Okay, motion passes with Alderman Suffredin abstaining. And any items for discussion? Any items for communication? May I have a motion to adjourn?
I have, my light.
Oh, sorry about
That's
that.
okay. I just have a referral. Well, one thing I want to just compliment our staff. Our Amazon purchases have been going down. We've been doing more purchases locally on the credit card, so thank you. And then I have one referral, I guess, for legal.
This one?
I want to make sure, I think this week or maybe next week, I'll double check you, but the governor is signing a new bill that will get rid of the past practice of suspending your driver's license for parking tickets, outstanding parking ticket fees. So I want to make sure that we update our city code to reflect that as well. I believe it's going into effect January 1st as well.
Thank you, Alderman Fleming.
Thank you. And we had a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. City Council will start at 7:10.